how's it going? Thanks for checking out the video today. So this is going to be part 3 of the Bullitt build. So I want to go ahead and go over a few things that I've already done. This is going to be installing the Vortech Supercharger. If you guys haven't seen the last 2 videos, part 1 and part 2 on this deal, check that out. I'll leave links in the description below on that. So let's go ahead and dive into this one, and I'll show you what I've done so far. All right, so first of all, let me get over here and show you the Supercharger. This is a Vortech V-3si charge cooler kit. It's got a 3.6 pulley. This thing's probably going to push about 8 pounds of boost. These are not like too awful big. These are a little bit smaller than a Paxton 2200 if you want to compare. These are self-contained, just like the Paxton is, as far as oiling goes. And these are fun little units, man. They're not too small, they're not too big. They build boost very quick, so that's pretty cool. So as you know, this is a 2008 Mustang Bullitt 3-valve 4.6, and I've already got the bracket on, so I'll just go over a couple of things. I didn't really video any of this because it's a little confusing, because they actually have at least 2 different setups for these brackets. So on this particular one, what you have to do here is you got to pull a long bolt out here. You remove the bolts that hold the factory idler pulleys on. There's one there. There's one down there. You actually replace the bolt on the idler pulley with these spacers. These spacers actually screw in. They replace the bolt in the idler pulley, and then they obviously hold this bracket in place. You have this one here, and then you have the one on the bottom like I showed you. Then you have to remove, so you have this stud here. You take the nut off, and then you pull this stud out for the alternator bracket down here. And there's a long bolt that comes with it with a longer spacer. There's actually a triangular bracket on the back here that obviously you can see that holds the idler pulley on that comes with the kit. And it comes with a little self-centering spacer on the back, a little shorter spacer on the front. It's actually a pretty well thought out kit. It's very stable. Once I got this in place, I left everything loose. Wanted to make sure it all lined up very well. You know, obviously this one here is replaced with another spacer. This one's actually the longest spacer of all of them, and a long bolt that goes in. I went ahead and when I put them all in, tightened them up, I torqued them all to about 25 foot-pounds, and I put Loctite on all of them. And I actually use, and you could use the blue, but I like using the orange. It's a high strength, but it is removable. You don't have to put heat to it. So this is one of the bolts that actually came out. This was the one that was here. Had to remove that one. There was another one just like this, a little bit shorter, that actually went here, just had a stud on it. Had to take it off, cut the stud off, grind it smooth, have to have clearance for the supercharger. So that was one thing you had to do. And then here's the stud and the bolt, or the stud and the nut that was holding the alternator on here on the bottom. just basically had to remove this. It's a little Allen head. Unscrews it, came right out, no problem. But so, I mean, that's pretty much it. This thing is pretty straightforward. It's not really that bad at all. It's so right now I'm ready to set the supercharger on. It bolts here. There's 5 of them that the supercharger bolts to. This hole in here is so you can actually plug the cam sensor back in. As you can see, I'll have to do a little modifying on this. I'll probably just end up popping this loose, bringing it over so this will reach around. I think I'm going to have to cut this back to get a little bit extra wire to come out. I'm gonna see what I want to do with that. I want to make sure it looks good when I'm done. So like I say, this is the new pulley that comes with it. All the other pulleys stay in place. It comes with a longer belt, and you really need to go ahead and route the belt and get it in place before you put this bracket up. So what I did is I put it in place and I put a zip tie on it just to kind of hold it in place. And then there's a certain way that this belt goes. So when you put this bracket on, you have to make sure you have it routed right around the spacers. You don't want to go under the spacer. It has to go on top of these spacers. So and let's see, also have to relocate the power steering reservoir. So this reservoir was actually bolted right here, and then here's the hoses. This hose comes from the pump. This hose actually comes from the cooler. It's got a power steering cooler on it. So the kit came with brass male-to-male fittings, so you could basically connect right into the factory hoses. Came with the clamps, and came with extra hoses here. See if I can swing it around. It came with a large hose and a small hose, and you relocate it here. The only problem I ran into is this is the bracket. It comes with a bracket, comes with an Allen head with a nut. They say to bolt it right here where the ground, one of the ground wires would be. Only problem is when I couldn't get it to fit right with it being twisted right there, because this was going straight into the radiator. Like, it just would not fit. So it fit perfect at that angle. So what I did is I just drilled a hole and put a nice large pot rivet in there. You know, I wanted to go with a large one. That way it wouldn't loosen up at all. So that was an easy fix there. I did go ahead and put the heat exchanger on. It's got a really nice heat exchanger. You can see it bolted on really easy. It comes with brackets that are adjustable up and down. It came with longer bolts. You basically remove the styrofoam, and then they want you to replace the 2 bolts on the inside here, 2 bolts on the inside here. It came with longer ones. It came with spacers, and you just put that on loosely. You also put the brackets on the heat exchanger loosely, and they're also adjustable, so you can slide this forward and back. Same on this side. So I put it on and I left them loose. Then on this side, you also replace these 2 bolts that hold the bumper on with longer ones. And it came with this bracket that bolted in place, and it's also adjustable up and down. And this is the pump for the heat exchanger. So keep in mind, this is a liquid cooled system. It has I'm going to call it a water to air intercooler. This water to air being that, you know, it's a heat exchanger. That's the bottom of it. As air passes through there, it kind of cools the coolant. That coolant runs back through a charge cooler, and I'll show you that in a minute. But this is the pump, and it came with these straps bolted all up. You basically ground it to any close ground, which I just grounded it to one of these bolts here. This wire is a power wire. I've got it running in wire loom already. I have it running up. I just have it sitting in here for now. I'll wire that up later. I went ahead and ran the hose to the pump. It comes with this hose that's already got a nice bend to it, and then it came with another hose that would connect to that one. I don't know if you can get in there and see that or not, but I've already got that hose ran all the way to the pump right there, and then I zip tied it to the power steering cooler. Keep it in place real nice there. You can see it. It's all pot riveted. Let me see if we can get a better view underneath here. Just have it attached real nice there so it doesn't flip around or move around. And then once I got all that, you know, mounted up, I went ahead and adjusted this. I left this bracket all the way down, and then I put this one all the way towards the front of the car, just so I'd have plenty of clearance here. I went ahead and put the bumper cover back on to make sure I didn't have any clearance issues, and there was no problems at all. I didn't have to trim anything. The only thing I had to make sure was I had to make sure that this pump was up high enough, because the bottom of the front bumper cover was wanting to hit here. So I lifted this one up as high as I could without it rubbing on the frame right here. I've only got less than 1/4 of an inch right here between the bumper frame and the rubber hose, but that gives me enough clearance. I've got about, probably on the bottom, I've probably got a good inch clearance now, so there's nothing that's going to be rubbing here. So I'll go ahead and show you the charge cooler. We've got it laying over here, and this is the charge cooler. Pretty neat piece. Let me lay it over here. So this thing just basically bolts right to the throttle body. That's why it's kind of shaped, it's oval shaped. I just got it all taped up so nothing will get in. But it's pretty cool. I mean, it's the supercharger. It will come out of here. You got your air inlet here. The boost comes out of here. It's going to feed into this side. You've got coolant running through here. It'll be a 50-50 mix of coolant. It has its own little reservoir that actually holds the coolant, and then the pump constantly circulates it. It's kind of like a Whipple or VMP or any, you know, water-cooled supercharger, like a TVS style. But this is just in line between the supercharger and the throttle body. And then you have your inlet and outlets for the coolant. Oh, actually, they're right here. I got them taped off. There'll be an inlet and an outlet right here for the coolant to go through. Now you can also run ice water through that. If you've got a larger, let's say you put an ice tank, you could run an ice tank. You can buy them an ice tank to put in the engine compartment. You can buy an ice tank to put in the trunk, and you can run ice water, which is what a lot of guys do when they race instead of the coolant. That would definitely cool the air charge big time. Of course, you know, every pass you got to change and put fresh ice and water back in because it heats it up so quick. So, but you know, it's pretty cool. You can get these kits without the cooler. You know, you basically would run a little bit less boost. I'm not for sure, but I think it comes with a larger pulley if it doesn't have the charge cooler, less boost. Or you just have to tune it less timing so you don't get any detonation. You know, obviously you got to have a lot higher intake temp sensors without a cooler. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and continue on. I'm gonna get the supercharger bolted up on there. So before we install the supercharger on the bracket, we have to go ahead and install the drain hose. I've got it upside down right now. It actually comes with a cap. These come with oil already in them. And they actually send you enough for 3 oil changes. So we want to go ahead and put this on before we, mount it on the bracket so we don't lose any oil there. And they put them on pretty snug. So what I like to do is I like to get a wrench on the adapter plug that goes into the unit. And then we put this on. This is 9/16. And then just use the larger one to break it loose. Otherwise you can use a gun or something. If you try to do it just to loosen this up, you really got to hold it, man, because it's tight. It's real tight. You want to make sure that thing don't leak. So I'm going to go ahead and take this cap off of here. I've already kind of figured out the way I want to route it down. Once this is hanging down, zip tie it underneath real nice. And this is obviously a flared male to a flared female, so you don't have to put any thread sealer or anything on this. It's kind of like an AN fitting. So you just screw it on and snug it up. And then it has an actual plug in the end of it. And see, I made sure it was tight, which it is. They've already marked it too. So whenever you change the oil in these, you just take that plug out of there and let it drain out. Put the plug back in. It's got a dipstick on the top too. Also too, once I get it mounted, they have a plug that we have to remove and actually screw this in place of it, and it's a vent because you don't want this building up pressure. And they put a plug in it so it doesn't leak the oil out during shipping. I've got it snug, and then I'm going to use this again just to kind of hold it, to tighten it up. So this is the dipstick right there. There's a dipstick that runs down in there, and we'll check all that once we get it all mounted in place. And this is the plug right here. They actually had a tag on it, a paper with some instructions, and they tell you to remove this plug and install this vent plug, which is, it's even got a brass washer on it so it doesn't leak. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera around and get this thing hung on there. All right, let's see how this thing fits on here. I went ahead and got this belt slipped off the water pump pulley so I could actually pull the belt up high enough, because I got to put it up over this pulley here once I get it on. I'm going to just drop this drain hose down, straight down for now. There's obviously only 5 holes on this bracket, and there's actually 6 holes on the head unit. So there's only one way it's going to go. This one's going to line up on this side. There's another one that's up high, up over here, threaded hole, that's not going to be used. So also, sometimes you have to clock these. I'll have to kind of get the charge cooler in place and get this all lined up. I want to just go ahead and temporarily put 2 bolts in here now, and I'm going to go ahead and put the intake back on. I had to take the intake off. Well, you really just have to lift the intake up to put this spacer on here. There's a spacer on here for the thermostat housing to lift it up higher. And I went ahead and just took it off. Since I did the clutch, it was easier for me to get to the back bolts. If you got to take all the bolts out for the intake, you might as well just take the intake off. So I did that, got everything cleaned up, ready to go back on. I actually, part 1 of the video shows taking the intake off. and talks about some other stuff there too, so y'all be sure to check that out. So I'm gonna go ahead and just temporarily get 2 bolts on here to hold it, and then I'm gonna get the intake back on, and I'm gonna kind of mock up the cooler, because I have a feeling I'm gonna have to clock this to line up with the cooler. So let's go ahead and get 2 of these in for now. Go ahead and get this intake back on. All right, so before I put this intake on, I wanted to make sure these vacuum hoses were secured good. The hose that went from this is all factory. I did change this hose. So this is a factory T. This hose goes to the fuel rail pressure sensor. Obviously this one goes to the brake power booster. None of these had any clamps on them at all. This one was kind of tight. These were really tight. This one was loose. I could just pull it off easy because the hose, the old original hose, was kind of swollen up a little bit, probably from some vapor, some oil vapor getting in there. And I tried hose clamping it, and I could still pull it off with a little bit of force. So I went ahead and changed the hose. I put a new one on it. I put a hose clamp here and here. This one was pretty tight, so I just get a zip tie and I twist it as the tie's coming out, and it really tightens it up good. I cut off the excess. And then these are a couple of clamps that I had laying around I put on just to make them real tight. Because anytime you have boost on a car, supercharger turbos, even with a small amount of boost, 8-9 pounds, if you have a loose hose, you're going to eventually blow that hose off. And you're going to not only have a bad vacuum leak, but you will have loss of boost, of course, and it's going to run like crap. So I went ahead and took care of that. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the intake put on. Okay, so I ended up having to clock this supercharger inlet a little bit. If you look right there, I made a couple of marks. I put one there, and I was using that little edge as a reference point. I put a little bit there. This mark was actually further that way. And this part here was not lined up 100%. So basically this coupler goes on like this, and it wants to line up with that right there. And what was happening was it was kind of tilted like this. I was able to get it on, but it was like this. So I needed to move, or I should say clock, the housing, and I'm gonna have to trial fit it again. I was just guessing at how far to move it. So I'm going to put it on there again. I'm going to mock this up again and see if it fits. This is something that in the instructions they don't even tell you. They really should have these mocked up depending on application, but they don't, because this supercharger fits a lot of different applications. So what you do to clock it is you loosen these screws up right here. There's actually a washer, I call it a washer. It just goes from here to here. There's another one that goes from there to the other one, and then there's also a third one over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's a total of 6 Allen heads. You just loosen them up a little bit, and then you can turn the actual housing. And depending on the application, sometimes you got to turn them a lot. And let's say we had to turn this one this way and we had to go a lot, then this would obviously come in contact. So these holes are all the way around. You can see there's another one there, there's another one further around. So you have to move these to wherever you need to whenever you clock this. This one didn't need to be moved much, just about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to mock it all up again, and I'm going to see if everything lines up where it needs to be. If not, I'll reposition it again, but I'm hoping this will be where it needs to be. Well, so I got this thing all mocked up. Was able to clock it to get it lined up perfectly with the charge cooler laying over there. Got it all bolted on. I went ahead and got the intake on, and I got this adapter. Let me show you here. So this thermostat housing comes, they got a spacer that raises it up a little bit, and then you got to cut the original hose off to use a piece of it to put this 90-degree adapter on here. And I had to mock it up too, so I've got it all in place where it clears everything. And then the factory hose will come over here and connect to it. I got all that set up. So then I was going to go ahead, and I had the belt already routed, because they want you to route the belt and everything like I showed you before, where it sticks up. Well, unfortunately, this belt is too short. This is the one that they sent in the kit, and it's too short. I mean, I had triple check to make sure that it was, there's only one way that it routes, and it's really a spaghetti, man, the way it runs all around. But it's a nice fit, but it's just too short. I mean, I pull this tensioner down, and there's just no way. It's got to be at least 1.5 inches short. So that really just throws a wrench in this whole deal. I was planning on getting the belt on, and then I was going to go ahead and do the spark plugs, throw the injectors back on. I've got to mount the coolant reservoir over here. It comes with a new one. There's going to be an actual reservoir for the cooler, you know, the intercooler itself. I got to mount it over there, and then go ahead and run the lines and all that. So now I got to wait and get a belt. So I'm calling Vortech, give them this part number, let them know it's too short. I'm gonna see what they say. I looked in the parts list. It comes with a parts list with all the parts, and it doesn't show a Vortech part number. It shows a Gates part number, totally different part number than this belt. So I was kind of, you know, I can look the part number up on a Gates and see what the length is. So I'm gonna call them, see, let them know what's going on. You know, I got to get that figured out. Hopefully I can get the length, and then I can order a Gates belt. I like to use the heavy duty ones, the green ones. I can get one of them ordered and probably get it here tomorrow. That way I can go ahead and get this belt replaced. The problem is I got to pull the supercharger back off to change the belt. That's why you want to route everything first. So that's a little aggravating, because putting that supercharger on that bracket wasn't fun. I'm going to show you. So I got the bracket all in place. They got this spacer here. It came with 2 smaller washers for shims in case you needed it. Well, I needed it. There's 2 little washers here that shims it out because there was too much of a space here with all the other ones tightened up. So the bolts on this supercharger, there's one here, there's another one further underneath. Well, actually there's 2 that's straight underneath, and then there's 2 more here. So I basically use my long needle nose pliers to get in there. I put this one here, I put this one here, and then I was able to get, you know, the other ones on. But as you can see, you can't even see the one around the other side. So I had to come over here on this side and come up from the bottom with a pair of needle nose to get it in there. It wasn't fun at all. And then I used a ratchet wrench to get them all tight. So I got them all tight. So in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and start wrapping it up. I'm gonna get the injectors in, spark plugs changed, and I'm gonna just go ahead and get the coolant reservoir done, kind of pre-run the hoses and everything. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here. We're getting into about 30 minutes of this, maybe a little bit more. So we're gonna end up splitting this install video up to 3 parts here. So yeah, so definitely this will be part 3 of this build. So definitely check out part 4 and part 5 for the final install of this supercharger. We're gonna have a part 6 doing the Wilwood brakes. So you guys definitely stay tuned for all that. So I do appreciate you guys checking this video out, and be sure to check out the other parts. They'll be coming out very shortly. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good day, and I will see you on the next video.